Hello there. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Marche, the webinar director here at Advice Chaser. As you come into the webinar room, we want to welcome you and do a little bit of legal housekeeping before we get started. Advice Chaser, the host of this webinar, is not a registered investment advisor. We cannot and do not give financial advice. Today's presentation is for educational purposes only and cannot be considered advice for any person's individual situation. Advice Chaser regularly hosts informative webinars such as this one, featuring a variety of knowledgeable professionals, many of whom are licensed advisors. Any opinions, ideas, jokes, or principles expressed by presenters are their own, and however true, funny, or interesting are not endorsed by Advice Chaser. Please do not act on the information you hear today without consulting a qualified financial professional. Well, we're thrilled to bring you this educational presentation today. Attendees are muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions during the webinar today, and the presenters will answer those during or after the presentation as appropriate. If you ask a question in the chat box and we're not able to get to it, go ahead and leave your phone number or email address as well. We'll go ahead and make sure someone reaches out to you after today's event to make sure that gets addressed. I'd love to introduce you to our presenter today. Diana Murphy is a mindset and life coach for trusted advisors and small business owners. She works with owners that want to grow faster and with more ease to prevent burnout. The focus of her work is guiding owners back to their own genius and power lane as they handle and create the growth that they crave in their business. Her clients create more ease by becoming better decision makers as they lean into their values and passion to serve their clients. In addition, Diana is the creator of the Regret Proof Your Business podcast. Diana, we're so glad to have you here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Great. What an honor. It's just an honor to be here today. What we want to cover today is that space where we're making decisions. Decisions create our future, to create results. So we're going to focus on regret proofing those for you today. During this presentation, you're going to learn how to step into your confidence and courageous action, even when your circumstances are stressful, perplexing, and uncertain. And when just the normal demands of your life are stressing you out. What I want to explain here is your brain is a heat-seeking missile for the negative. And why coaching and mindset and thought awareness is so powerful is it interrupts that heat-seeking missile for negative. So if you don't remember anything else, you can manage your thinking. You don't have to be happy all the time to be confident and courageous, and you don't even have to be confident all the time to create a great life. It is about being aware of your thinking when it's causing strong emotion. And I'll explain more about this later, but we have been taught to be that being happy or being fully confident all the time is what we need to be to have a great life. And it's just not true. We're human and we have 50-50 experience of negative and positive emotion. And even those terms are thoughts about emotions. Emotions are just vibrations, sensations in our body. So we want to normalize the human stress experience, that you're having stress because you're thinking in a certain way, and you can shift that thinking or create awareness around that thinking. Decision making. We can be pretty harsh with ourselves around this space. Decisions really create when they're open, when we have a lot of decisions to make. The open loops of decisions can really zap our energy. Also, we make a lot of decisions in the day. If you just think about the meals, the time you leave, just the day-to-day decisions you need to make, as well as the really important ones. And I do want to focus on those that are getting your attention, that are the important ones. How I define regret-proof decision-making is that space where you're intentional but it's not being perfect. It is being proud of what you're doing and the decisions you're making, even if it doesn't turn out as you hoped. It's being thoughtful, and it's actually getting the decision made. Closing those loops can be really helpful. And so when I was presented this slide, it's a gorgeous graphic. There's two more arrows I would write. One would be the one that keeps going in a circle and the arrow points inward and no decision is ever made, pretty common. And the other would be one that hits a brick wall, like you just can't make the decision. There's either that confusion and procrastination or no decision at all. And that's actually what probably in our lives creates the most stress and burnout, like is not closing those loops and making those decisions and moving forward and being in that stressful, like, oh my God, if I make the wrong decision, it's going to cause something horrible. And no decision determines our entire life. We need to calm down. But I want to honor that when decisions are important and a lot is going on in our world right now, these things can feel really huge. So we need to give ourselves some space here. All right, I love this slide. So I did not pick the photos, and I want to tell you that this just delighted me to no end. Like, aren't there days like this? So that angry, frustrated, like, I can't take it anymore. Most of our decision making, when we have full plates in our lives, and I coach people that have very full plates, they're parents, they are business owners, they have one-on-one clients, most of the people I work with, and I will tell you, this stressful moment happens often. What happens when we have a lot coming at us is that we will be in urgent response mode. We will be back on our heels. You know, the problems have happened. 3 teammates have shared something that's going on, or a client is angry with us. Just as examples, we will respond to the urgent first. That's reactive. Then when we're in negative emotion, I'll just use that because it's easier for us to, when we're in stressful emotions, we will do urgent first. It feels better. We will also move really fast. We might make decisions too quickly. We might just keep clipping at a pace and ignore what we really needed to get done. That's that urgent versus keeping our priorities. We will dig into, okay, anybody raise your hand. I have both up. Do you make a to-do list so that you can mark it off? Like, I will add items on my to-do list that I think of or come up during the day and scratch it off because it feels so good. So a lot of times when we're in even a low level of anxiety and stress, we can dig into tasks just to get them done and ignore and procrastinate the ones that are really dear to us. And this is what causes us then more accentuated stress, because we're not getting to those things that are really dear and near to our hearts. So when you're experiencing stress, reactive decision-making really is the antithesis of regret proofing. So we can go to the next slide. What's
before we go on to this, so we did have a question.
Yes.
So, you know, you talked about those big decisions that people delay on. Usually, what is the barrier that people talk about? So, you know, big things that they are delaying on.
So the brain, again, being a heat-seeking missile for the negative, the brain not only tells you the worst thought in history, like if you make this decision, your brain really almost underneath, if you make the wrong decision, your business could fail. And when then the brain does this whole story, if this decision fails, if this one hire is wrong, if this one new venture that you're doing, whatever the big decision is, it creates an entire negative story that freezes us. And it's collecting a lot of evidence to the negative, and it makes sense that people get frozen in these. And we're going to talk about how being curious and compassionate can unlock this. But I want to normalize that, Marche, because when we get totally frozen, we're in fight or flight. And our brain can create that experience with the negative story. So for those situations, it's really just taking a breath. We're going to talk about some tools to calm down, but it's very, very common to be the big decisions get even bigger and bigger and bigger in your mind. I do recommend, this is just a little bit of a life hack, setting a timeline of a decision to about 48 hours. That's about all the time we need. Now, if you need further time to make decisions, Mark your calendar when you're going to think about it and gather research, and don't think about it any other time. So again, that creates that less brain drain, and we get, done with all the other parts of our lives, and then we take some time to make that decision. But I encourage people to make important decisions, financial decisions, in 48 hours.
All right,
That
let's
help?
go ahead and move on.
Yeah. Intentional decision making is where we get in regret proof space. I love the whole, as you know, my theme is regret proofing. And it's that none of us want to run a business, lead our family, lead a team, whatever we're in charge of, lead our own lives. We don't want to look back and regret it. And where we get into a space where we're more proud and more intentional is being a little more aware of our thinking and be more intentional. And how do we do that? We are aware of our thoughts in stress. What is going on for me? We use more, and I would even use a stronger word, compassion, curiosity, and grace to shift out of that stress zone. Like Marche's question, like we can get stuck and frozen, but the unlocking the key to unlock those stuck places is being compassionate with ourselves. Of course, this is almost self-talk. Of course, this is a really big decision. Do breathe slowly, take some time to think about it. You've made great decisions, look for positive evidence and interrupt that moment. Also, I thought when I built my business, I had to be confident 100% of the time it was never going to work. So this is really bad way that a coach went to in a mindset, right? I thought it's my perfectionism. And so what I've learned in growth, and I'm helping my owners learn, and I help, my family learn, is that allowing that emotion to ride along with you is just part of the human experience. If we don't think something's wrong, I used to think something was wrong if I was worrying about something. And it was like, I had to get rid of the worry to grow through it. No, I had to learn to operate with a fearful morning. Like this morning, I was totally freaking out about the webinar. And I was like, why? I knew I was comfortable with Marche. I do podcasts all the time. This is not an unusual space for me, but I'm a human. And so allowing that experience of stress this morning helped me. The minute I saw Marche's face, I calmed down and we got to it and we're having fun. So I want you to just know that if you don't judge that you're feeling a negative emotion, that's what locks it in. And the intentional decision making is always making it in a calmer state and in more clarity. So waiting till you're calmed down can really help our decision making, but not procrastination, as I mentioned.
So someone had a question about what if you can't really calm down until you've started making the decision or started the process? Is that normal?
Yes, totally normal. And is sometimes starting to take some type of action is helping that nervous energy to start moving. Sometimes it's moving your body alone, like seriously, I will ask clients to leave the room and just even excuse to go to the bathroom just to walk off that energy. But yes, sometimes starting to take that action and make some smaller decisions to get rolling is absolutely a great tactic. Great question. All right. So decision making, how do we move from reactive to intentional? First of all, I want to give you, we are going to have days that are all reactive. It's just part of life. But if there's some spaces that you're noticing today that you would love to be more efficient at decision making, less stuck in your decision making, just know that the tool I'm going to share with you next is leaning into thought awareness there and using just that compassion and curiosity in that moment, so that let that fear ride along and keep moving. We can go to the next one. The thought model. It is my favorite tool. I want to explain it a little bit, and then we're going to walk through an example. And I want to just check my time here. Perfect. The thought model is that our circumstances do not create the feeling. There's a very quick step that happens in our brain, and it's the thought. So thought awareness is that step in this model. Circumstances trigger thoughts. in a millisecond, nanosecond. I don't even know the fastest thing of time. Our brains work very fast. So it feels real and true, but the thought is what creates a feeling in your body, a sensation and emotion, which creates action, or as we know, fear will create inaction, as an example. The culmination, not just the one decision, not just the one experience of stress and going through this thought model creates our results. It's the actions over and over. If you procrastinate over and over and over, your growth will be slower. But if you learn to manage your mind in about 50% of the time, you don't procrastinate. You take action more quickly because of your thought awareness. You're going to create a result that's better than if you weren't thought aware. All right, we can do an example. All right, I love a good flip chart. This is how I work, and I appreciate the opportunity to do this. So awareness is the most powerful tool. You will not learn this model today unless you've been exposed to it somewhere else, and you don't need to. But it gives you a framework of understanding how to be thought aware. So right now we have an economy. We always have an economy. It's a circumstance. I even was going to write bad economy. That's a thought. It's a thought whether it's good or bad. So we have a lot of thoughts when we hear economic news. Right now we're hearing about impending recession. We're hearing about growth, but there's a lot of factors. And what I want to share here is there are a lot of thoughts that come up when we hear this on the news. My money won't last. I don't have enough.
So these are thoughts that people could be
Yeah, so these
it.
are typical thoughts that are triggered when we watch the news.
Yeah.
I'm scared. I'm scared because I went through the 08 recession, and those T's, these are almost mindsets. Like these are the things that come up that really create the emotional experience. And I'll use one so everybody can see it clearly. And it can be just as simple as I won't have enough money. And no matter what your family of origin has taught you about money or what your experience is, this is a common way to react. There's like our culture around money and our thoughts around money to really kind of encourage this. So don't be like, this is normal to think I won't have enough. And that usually causes a lot of fear. And so our actions, again, we're doing this in a framework of making decisions during this economy. I'm helping a lot of business owners right now make good decisions that are growth for them. And if they're in fear, they're not going to make the right regret-proof decisions. So fear stops it. It causes procrastination or a super safe move. And most leaders don't do safe, but we might sneak it in there every once in a while. And it's good for us to be aware of it. And sometimes it's good to make some safe moves when we do it in a more intentional, grounded space.
But
when we're making
give an
decisions,
example? Sorry, can you
pardon?
give an
Yes.
example of what might be like a safe move?
Yeah, so a safe move might be not going in on, you have all the data that this might be a good investment or a good decision to hire or a good investment for yourself. And you make the safe move of like, it's all in fear. I'm so afraid of spending more money right now that we retract and don't do what we most need for ourselves in that moment. And so this can create a slower growth. It can create not leveraging an opportunity. We're talking about the economy. There are spaces where we really can take advantage of what's going on in our economy. And so, and again, it's all through that framework of, even for your family, it might be a powerful decision to stay in cash and not invest right now because you are a certain age or whatever it might be. I'm really much in this space because of some life circumstances. So these examples are easy, but fear will make us retract, not make a decision, go too slow. Whereas we're just calm, we can make the best regret-proof decision. So the biggest thing that we need to interrupt and be aware of is, what thought are you thinking when you're feeling stressed out? It's almost backwards. Why am I stressed out? And if, you think of a thought, audience, like, why am I stressed out? What is the key thought? And you just look at that thought, and you sometimes just putting it out on a piece of paper goes, oh, that's not really true, but it feels true. But it's observing. We as humans are able to watch our thinking. And when we watch it, it distances us from this emotional experience. And that's what helps us move into, I have enough. This is just a very simplistic model. I have enough. We're calmer. We decide. And this is where we create that proud, regret-proof space, intentional. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just moving into a more grounded space. We will hear better advice. We will, if we're making a hire, if we get in a calm space, we're not going to make too rapid of a hire, and we're not going to make too rapid of a firing, because we're just trying to feel better in the moment. And sometimes we think the action is going to make us feel better. Our thinking is the only thing that will make us feel better.
Very interesting. So I'm excited to explore this a little bit more. Are we ready to move to the next part?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So in the moment, the only thing, this is one thing that I have done since I learned the thought model. The one question you can ask, why am I feeling this way? And it will help you to get some access to what your brain is thinking. Oh, I'm really afraid that blank. Okay. And having some compassion for why you're feeling stressed. That's just one step. But we also can't ask like, well, that's not going to work, or it's never going to work. We need to ask better. We need to ask questions that are open-ended. What is possible? What is possible if I get the right information when I make this decision? So open-ended questions are a way that puts our brain in possibility and getting more creative about how to solve something. So, running a business, running a team, taking care of a family. I raised 2 boys. There are always times when, if you think it like, oh my gosh, will this ever work? Yes or no? Because your brain's in fear. No. But what is possible here? What are some other ways I could do this? What's a simpler way to do this? What is moving that brain into open-ended questions? In the moment of stress, wondering why helps lighten the load. Our brain writes really negative stories in an instant, and sometimes stopping and really looking at the story you're writing. I know that I was in an economic forum the other day, and I was having heart palpitations. And I know that my brain was going to you're not going to have enough. This is going to hurt, this next economic experience is going to hurt your business. It's not going to go well. You're not going to be able to live in that great place you're in. That was my brain story. And understanding that you go to that negative story really quickly and interrupting it, is that really true? No, I know I can handle it. I've handled something like this before. Go to evidence of, where have I done something difficult before? And it starts informing the brain of a better story. One really key space that I want you to walk away with today, in these moments, supporting yourself and not judging yourself for being stressed out is the key to unlocking it. And in this moment, I've learned different tools. One of them, Marche and I were talking about box breathing, giving yourself that you will notice in any negative, stressful emotion, overwhelm, you're going to be tight and you're breathing probably all up here. Our body is here to support us. And when you notice that tightness, just breathing in steady intake 4, hold for 4, exhale slowly for 4, and repeat and hold for 4. box breathing can be a gorgeous way to support yourself in that stress. It can be a somatic way that you calm down your nervous system so that you can be calm. And even what do I need right now? The question that was offered was like, I found that I start just making some decisions and I get moving. Sometimes we do, like I mentioned, the walk, we do need to get into nature, take our shoes off and be on the grass. Just walk around if you're in an office really quickly. It can be very quick, but allowing that emotion to pass through the rest of your body. Emotions only last in our body 90 seconds.
I didn't know it was that short.
And why we feel it longer is it gets stuck. And that's where the curiosity is so important. And then also aiding and supporting ourselves in a kind way. Like, I think my little girl was scared this morning. I think that inner child operates as our protector. It's like, you can't do that webinar. It's going to go terribly. And like, I was getting all that stuff and I was like, oh, honey, it's okay. And I started just allowing it. And all of a sudden it was gone. And so, but we have not been taught these tools. It's getting very popular. And we're hearing a lot of ways that we can calm down our nervous system after being through the pandemic and a lot of other challenges. And really asking, how can I support myself here? Be kind. What do I need right now? And it could be writing on your calendar, decide it, not in a procrastination way. It's like, I'm going to talk to these 3 people and I'm going to decide by noon tomorrow. And you've just tabled that thing that keeps going over and over in your mind, and you can get on with your day and be present for the people you're with right there. All right. I think we can go to the next one. Just being aware of your thought can be enough. Just being aware. Most of the work I do with clients, we spend the first 6 weeks just in awareness. And you've been given tools and an awareness that you can also step in once you're calm into intentionality. We can always think in a different way, but you don't need to do it quickly to feel better and get calm. Those calm thoughts are riding right along with the stressful ones. When you calm down your nervous system and realize you're thinking the worst and you don't want to make a decision in that space, you can calm down, write that thought down, and then move into what you want to be thinking. I can handle this. I'm going to make a decision I'm proud of and move forward. So thoughtful awareness when you're in that moment. Why am I stressed? What is the thought here? What subtle shift can I make? I made a shift this morning when I was super, super nervous to focusing on you. And you can do the same. When we are self-focused, it's not selfish. It's like we're having our own experience of stress. We are not thinking about the other people around us. And one of the quick interruptions is just focus on the other person in your room. If you're with a teammate, you're with a child, you're with your spouse, with a partner, a friend, focus, ask how they are doing. Start focusing on being in tune with them. It's a way that you can subtly. I started focusing on the audience and what you needed today, and no longer did I care how well I did the webinar. It took all the intention off of me. And I have learned to do that because that is my craft. I can't be nervous every podcast. I can't be nervous during a coach call, or I will not be able to help the person on the other side. And I know, Marche, there are people in our audience that they would not be here if they didn't want the best for themselves and the people they're taking care of and are with. And that's where making that shift to focusing on the other human can be so powerful. Can you let fear ride along? Can you just allow and not judge that you're scared? And I did that today as well, as an example. If you have something that is really, really triggering you right now, giving yourself this space that that's just part of my experience right now, nothing's gone wrong, can be a calming space. And judgment locks. Our self-talk of judgment will lock these stress cycles. They're almost a circle. I call that it's a worry cycle. We can get stuck. And again, everything I've shared with you today, when we ask a better question, when we're kind to ourselves, it interrupts that stress cycle. Offering yourself grace that you are here because you thought a negative thought, and get really just rational about this. Like, of course I'm stressed out. I'm thinking I'm going to get fired tomorrow. And it's like, well, that's the ugliest thought I could ever think. What do I want to be thinking right now? It might be, I'm just going to do the best job ever. If I get laid off, I will know what to do. And you get back to work and create an amazing experience working until maybe something does happen. Real events do occur, but we can like almost borrow the stress ahead of time. Like this economy. We can be worrying about the recession before we even have one. and that doesn't serve us.
So we're worrying about future events.
Yes, and we bring them into the
happened
present.
Yet, and worry about them in the present. Interesting.
Yeah, and it's the space where we worry ahead of time. And so many of us, it's a way that we think we're protecting ourselves. And many times it can be where we're creating misery. And that's where it's optional. It's like unlocking that worry cycle so that you can step into a space where you have a normal experience of worrying, but you don't get locked in and super stressed all the time. Mm-hmm. And then that's why thinking about the people in the room can pull you to present. That is not worrying about the future. It's just staying in the present.
Well, I know that we had a couple questions here and I want to go ahead and get to them.
Thank you, Marche.
So you talked a lot about the decision model. What role does getting expert advice play? Where does that fit into that thought model?
It is really important when you are receiving advice that you aren't in fear. That's where we can do our own work. I hired this person. I vetted them. I knew I wanted to work with them. I can trust them. But we also do our own work. And I have done this over and over where I get very honest about what I want and I make sure I express my needs. That's where if we're in fear, we're just going to listen to every bit of advice and like just back off. And when we're using expert advice and we're working with advisors, we need to do our work of trusting ourselves, but also expressing ourselves so that that advisor can tandem and partner and give us the best advice. So fear might make us think that everybody else has the right answer, but the best advice will come when it's imbued with what that person wants or needs. Does that answer that question?
I'm also thinking about just, any sort of expert. So if you're working with a CPA or if you're working with an attorney, a doctor.
Yes. Any of them where we feel like there's an authority figure that's different than our expertise. And instead of feeling less than or that they have all the answers and I have none, I feel like the most effective way to work with an expert is to take that time. You know how people are advised to write their questions out before they go to a doctor visit. That's a perfect example of getting grounded in what you need and what you're bringing to that conversation. And that's the most effective way that the physician could help you is by getting really grounded in your own thinking. And not thinking that they have all the answers, I have none. It's like we know ourselves best. And when we express that and share that with others, that gives them the best opportunity to serve us.
Can you talk a little bit about how you get to the changing those thoughts or replacing that negative thought? How do you come up with that thought? Because maybe someone, for you to use that example, maybe they really won't have enough. And
right.
So maybe research says, you're going to need to supplement or do change jobs or do something like that.
I think the shifting is like when you get information and it's really true, like I don't have enough, it's writing out the actual fact versus the whole energy of I don't have enough. So we'll use this example. I don't have the dollars needed to do these specific things. But that's where we start looking, Marche, for evidence of what we have done before and what we're capable of. Because even like in the pandemic and with a lot of early retirements, we're seeing a lot of people that are working again, but actually loving it. It's not a bad thing, right? it's like, oh, I've been here before. I know I can do this. I know I can make budgeting fun. I can do this. And it's not going from this fear to happy quickly. It's honoring the fear, getting the data, moving slowly forward and going, okay, where have I taken care of this before? You know, my family, we experienced a lot of loss during the '08 recession. It was really, like, for many, many people, it was really hard. And that's literally what I'm using as evidence that I can handle whatever's ahead. It's what I used when we entered COVID. It's like, well, you went through '08 and you as a family actually are more resilient and made better. Like, there was some great things that came out of it. And so it's being resourceful in your thinking too, of looking where you have handled something before. And I can get help from family and others around you.
That's
We
great.
get very isolated in fear.
Do you have any specific, this is a good question. Do you have any specific thoughts on mantras, things that you say to yourself?
Oh, I love this part. Don't go there too quickly. Mantras are amazing, but if you don't believe them, you're like beating yourself up for not believing them. Like, I feel like not worthy, or I feel less than, or I'm not enough. It's a very common thought as a human being. And it comes up for people that are high achievers because we're in this space of growth and wanting more all the time. And that I am not enough cannot go, I'm amazing. That's false. Like, so mantras are helpful when you read one and you get a hit and go, yes, I can believe that. And so subtle shifts of that, just like that fear, being aware, and then going, but I've handled the hard things before, can be the only shift we need to make to start taking action. We don't need to be super happy to make everything better. Does that answer what you're
Yeah,
getting at with
I
mantras? Because I love mantras, but we've been taught like, oh, but you should be really happy now because, and that is where we start judging ourselves for how we're feeling. We're feeling how we're feeling. And grabbing some mantras or truths that you know resonate with you, that is the mantra I would want people to hold on to.
very interesting. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions. Do you have
Great.
any takeaways that you want to end with before we end our webinar today?
Just two. You are normal. Your brain is a heat-seeking missile for negative. Interrupting it is the most powerful way. Interrupt it with your own soft self-talk.
Thank you so much. Well, I do want to thank our attendees for attending today. And I do want to let you know that we will be sending out a link to the replay of this webinar tomorrow, and that will be in your inbox soon. You're welcome to share this replay with your friends and family. Here at Advice Chaser, we're all about helping you find a financial advisor who's a great fit for your life and your financial questions. Our matching service is free to you, and every one of our advisor partners has committed to offer a free initial consultation to anyone we introduce them to. Find out more by going to advicechaser.com and clicking on the link to find an advisor. Once again, from Advice Chaser, thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you at another webinar soon. Goodbye, everyone.